Today's podcast is part 2 of a YouTube Live where we discuss Harley Davidson's recent financial results and what new bikes may be coming soon from the motor company. If you are watching or listening to this podcast and would like to catch the live show, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and set notifications for all so you don't miss a live stream. So I guess they want, some people wanted to know what about the Harley stuff. And I did a video on this a week ago, and that video has really surprised me how much is taken off. YouTube's latched onto it for some reason. It's really doing well. I'm going to look and see here, but that video it's been my best video in the last 10 videos. I'd have to go back and try and compare further to know more, but it is, I think, 35,000 views or something like that now. It's about the Harley Davidson financial report for the end of the year, 2022. And I know you've watched the video, Steve. And part of the reason I make that video is for people like Steve, because he's told me how much he likes that information and being told about that stuff and getting the inside scoop without having to sit through the 45-minute call that I sat through. And then I spend another hour trying to decipher all the stuff in the slides to put it in a way that's more interesting and entertaining and breaking it down for people and stuff. So
that's what I appreciate. Anytime you're dealing with finances, it can get, hard to understand and complicated. And you seem to do a great job of dumbing it down for us. And
well, when you're dumb, it's easy to keep it on your level. I'm not a financial analyst. I've gotten questions on it. So people, will make assumptions. I'll say something and they'll think I'm making an assumption. One of the things and where this comes into is the big story to me in the video is that Harley Davidson is now making about $3,500 per unit at the end of 2022 profit. So they made about $3,500 per motorcycle they sold on average. Now, this is not, record breaking. This is actually close to what they were doing in 2014, 2015, right in there. So it was 2014 was close to that amount. And then 2015 was declining, and it continued to decline all the way through COVID. And it just started to climb back up last year. And now they've gotten it back up to that level. And some people are going to say $3,500 is a lot. Harley could cut, a couple $1,000s off the price and still make money. But from my perspective and from what I know about, people in these kind of industries and making products and selling them, this is probably a 10 or 12% profit margin, which I think is, not unreasonable. I know people in business who sell products who have a much larger margin than that. And I've heard things like the jewelry market's 300 or 400%,
I've heard that too.
So I don't know if this is, out of norm for the motorcycle industry. I don't follow anyone else enough to know, but, some people said, well, maybe they found ways to cut costs and be more efficient and save money that way. And that's why they're making more. And I've commented back to those people. I want to say it right here. If they're doing that, that's not what they're saying. They're not saying they're doing that. What they're saying in the financial call, every call for the last year, is that the numbers are getting better and better because of an improvement in pricing and mix. And pricing simply means they're charging more. They're getting a better price for the product. They're getting more profit out of the pricing of the product, and the pricing does go up. So I don't think they have just saved cost efficiencies. Maybe they've been able to maintain their cost and increase their price and therefore increase their profit. But, they're not saying that they're saving money and that therefore they're getting more, profit by doing so. What they're saying is that they're doing better on pricing and mix. And the mix comes from the fact that they've got rid of the Sportster. And, they don't have that loss leader that they make no money on. They basically got rid of that bike. And the new Sportsters, whether we like it or not, are not cheap. The Sportster S and the Nightster and stuff are considerably more than what the 1200 and the 883s were.
Yeah. I think we get caught as consumers, we get caught up on the final price, right? You go in to buy a motorcycle and it's like the cheapest Harley's $13,000.
Yeah.
And they go up into the 60s if you get to a CVO dressed out bike. So we look at that big number and we think, oh my God, they must just be making money hand over fist. But I think what we forget is that there are a tremendous amount of costs that come into to building a motorcycle. And I was kind of surprised when you told me the average was $3,500. I thought it would have been more than that. And so I had to remember that, hey, you know, they're not going to charge more than what we're willing to pay.
Right. And you know, I see a lot of comments about how all these parts are made in China and everything else, but I've listened to stuff that Harley Davidson has said that's not public and in interviews and things like that. And they try really hard and they really pressure their suppliers and try and keep their supplies in the U.S. or through U.S. companies as much as possible, but they kind of hold their feet to the fire to stay competitive and quality products. So if they can buy it from someone in the U.S. and source it here in the U.S. and maintain a good quality product that is competitive in price, that's what they choose to do. Not saying they can do that everywhere. Maybe they're blowing smoke up my ass, but that's what they say they do. You know, I know they made $781 million net profit, net income this year. I know 2 years ago they made 1 million. So, you know, there are good years and bad years. And so if you were to take that average between the last couple of years with COVID, maybe they've only made, you know, 300 million a year, you know, because they've had 2 bad years and now they're making, you know, a better year. So it's hard to say exactly, but you have to bear that in mind that it's not always roses and apples, and sometimes there's some horse shit underneath it.
Well, they are a stock company. So I think, as you mentioned in your last video, there's people out there like us that are trying to make money off that stock.
Well,
so it's a back and forth. It's a give and take.
And I mentioned it in the video that they're like 37% of Harley Davidson is owned by 5 investment companies or 5 groups, institutions, BlackRock and H Partners and stuff like that. And what happens is when one of these guys gets 10% of the stock, or they get enough leverage that they can get Harley Davidson to put one of their guys on the board. So then the board of directors is run by these guys that have stock in the company who want to see a return on their investment. And what they care about is the stock value and the price. They don't care if there's a entry-level motorcycle or not, because they're not motorcycle people. They're investment people.
Yeah, they want to make money.
Harley Davidson's job is to make money. They just do it through the sales of motorcycles. That's what every business's job is to do, is to make money. I mean, that's the goal. And you know, if you look at the auto industry as a whole, the last couple of years, it's been absolutely crazy. Look at what's Ford, you know, I looked at the little truck they came out with, and, you know, the dealers around here wanted $10,000 over MSRP on a $25,000 truck. You know, it's supposed to be $25,000. And they wanted $35,000. Then they called me like, oh, let's come down. We're only charging $5,000 over MSRP now. Click with some profanity.
That's supply and demand. I mean, it gets that simple. I mean, if people are willing to pay over MSRP and they can sell the amount of units they want to sell and they're making the profit they want to sell or make at that level, then that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. And, you know, I know inventory at the end of this year is up. It's been a problem. I don't know that inventory being up at the end of the year is a bad thing, because last year, I know there was a time when dealers were saying that they were getting their inventory 2 months late. What should have been a March shipment was coming in May, things like that. So getting ahead on the inventory may not be a bad thing. The question will be, will the sales, you know, pick up and it stay? Because sales are down 10% globally, 8% I think it was. But in that ballpark. So sales are down. Inventory is getting back to where kind of it was pre-COVID. And so now it's going to be, I think, really telling in the next year what happens. You know, can they keep selling bikes at this level? Can they keep, you know, share with the inflation and all the things that people are dealing with? Or is that going to hurt bike sales, and sales going to continue to drop? Because, you know, face it, gas and eggs and all these necessities that we have to have have cost considerably more as well. And, you know, eggs may not sound like a big purchase compared to a bike, but when all those little things happen every week, they add up.
They do. Yeah. I mean, it's, 2x4, what a 2x4 was $1.75 a couple years ago. It's like $4 now.
Yeah.
So inflation, no one likes it.
Randall Ride says, bring back the panhead. I'd love to see the panhead come back, but if you want a panhead, you probably need to buy that aftermarket. I don't remember if it's RevTech or S&S, but they have an Evo-based motor that has a panhead, rocker cover on it. The fact is, Harley's never going to bring back the panhead because the EPA is never going to let them. They're struggling to keep the internal combustion engines they have now tuned in a way that the EPA will allow. So these older motors and technologies, they could make a look-alike, but it's not going to really be a panhead, and it's not going to sound like a panhead. Yeah, the EPA is killing the industry. I don't know if you saw the Cycle Source show Sunday night, but they're talking about the whole the EPA is coming after tuners and things like that, and it's a big deal. I mean, there are certain exhausts that are suddenly disappearing from wholesalers, the tuners. The guy that tuned my bike said that if I wanted to get it retuned, I'd have to take the license plate off and bring it in on a trailer and tell him that it's my race bike, because if he got caught tuning my bike because it has a race tuner with a license plate on it, he could be fined $1 million under this new act. Yes. And their Techno Research is not even selling tuning licenses in the U.S., but they're selling them in other countries, but they can't sell them in the U.S. because of the EPA. And, my whole thing with this EPA and the environment, and I'm not saying we don't need to be conscientious of our waste and our things that we're doing to the planet. But the fact is, if you can't get China and Russia and India on board, they have way more people than us. They can put out way more pollution than us. We're not going to make a dent if we can't get them on the same page. So all we're doing is killing ourselves in a losing battle if we can't get these other countries on board too.
Yeah,
Europe's in the same boat, and they're worse than us when it comes to the EPA kind of thing, as far as what people can do and what they have to have and stuff like that. But I don't understand it. People think that they're going to change the world when they're 5% of the world, and 35% of the world's not interested in changing.
Yeah, I could go on a political rant, which you probably don't want to hear, but we're our own worst enemies. We've got to all get together and find out what the truth is and see if we really do have a problem or not. And then and if we do, let's solve it. But in the meantime, if we don't, we're putting a lot of people out of business.
Yeah. And the EPA is killing the aftermarket industry for tuners, exhaust, intakes, a lot of stuff. I mean, it's crazy the things that it touches. It's not just tuners. It's everything tied to that motor in some ways. If it's not CARB compliant for California, bang, off the list it goes.
Plus, I want my bike to go as fast as humanly possible. I'm just saying.
So you're getting a 131? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I did put a 124 in it last year, so it scoots pretty good. I don't know if I have the answers, but I do know that we have the problems, and it's not going to get any better. People say, like I see a comment today, guy said, I don't understand why Harley, sells these bikes the way they are, and then you have to go out and you have to pay for a motor upgrade, and you have to pay for exhaust, you have to pay for this, you have to pay for that. Why don't they just give it to you on the bike? Because it won't pass EPA with all that on there. They can't sell it that way because EPA won't let them ship it that way. That's why the dealerships have to do that. And it's a regulatory thing as a manufacturer. I listened to the 5 Dirty Bikers podcast a little bit today while I was driving, and they were talking about dealers and pricing. And they think that dealers should put their pricing on the website. They want to be able to look at the pricing before they ever go in the dealer, know what the bike's going to cost and everything else. And that sounds great, right, Steve? I mean, we'd all like to know transparency on pricing.
Do you
Sure.
know why dealers don't put pricing on website even when they're MSRP dealers?
I don't.
I have been told by a dealer, and I won't say who, but I have been told by a dealer that if they have a price on the website and it is less than MSRP, they could get a heavy fine. So if they put a price on a website, let's say in January when the bike is launched, and then Harley decides to increase the price on that bike mid-year, which has happened,
Sure.
they don't catch it, they could get a hefty fine for for advertising that bike under MSRP. That doesn't mean they can't sell it under MSRP, but they're not allowed to advertise it. So what some of them have done is they're simply not going to put the price online because they're not going to take the chance of getting a hefty fine from Harley Davidson if something were to change.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of these dealers are small dealers. Some of them are, family-run businesses with their, daughters and sons and, half a dozen other guys working it. And then some are big automotive groups, like the guys that just bought out Rapid City. That's, a whole nother story there.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I'm always rooting for that small town guy, the small, Matt Laidlaw. Not that he's small, but that family-owned business. If it's run correctly, that's the guy I want to do business with if I can. I worry about these big conglomerates coming out and buying all these dealerships up because once they have the market, they'll have complete control, and who knows if we'll ever get any good deals or not.
Yeah, Ross Myers is sold out now. Sturgis, Harley Davidson, and Rapid City. It's hard to say what's going to happen. It's not something I want to see. Road Rush said it's also a marketing gimmick. I think for some of it is. For some of it, it's not. I mean, I know an MSRP dealer. He sells his bikes at MSRP, but he doesn't put the price on the website for that reason. And the price is hanging on the bike when you come in, and it matches MSRP, but he doesn't put it on the website because he doesn't have somebody that can sit there and check that every day and make sure he's compliant and to avoid a fine.
Yeah, it's too bad that you would find somebody that's trying to help you make money. But, I've spent a lot of years in corporate America. There's a lot of times I just don't understand it. It just doesn't seem rational, but it's the world we're in.
Yeah. Driving by Mid-America Columbia, it didn't look like they had any bikes, but I glanced. Maybe they were tucked indoors. So Mid-America they put their bikes out on the side of the building, their used bikes. But every time I've been there, they've had a lot of inventory inside as well as outside. But, I haven't been there in a couple months. So that's in Columbia there. Steve, have you been to that dealership?
I have. Yeah.
With the Indian dealership right next door. They were both in town 15 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. I think 5 to 10 years ago, the Harley dealership moved out on an exit off of 70. And the Indian dealer 5 years ago or 8 years ago was still in town. And they built right next door to the Harley dealer. I mean, next door neighbor.
I was talking to somebody about like CVS pharmacies. And then what's the other one? Walgreens. Have you ever noticed that a lot of times they'll be really close together?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times even maybe your lumber yards, your Home Depot, Lowe's, and that sort of thing. And supposedly there's research that shows that it's in both companies' best interest to put themselves as close as possible. Somehow it stirs more consumer awareness, and they make more sales. Kind of weird. And that's probably why Indian's trying to may want to try to get close to a Harley dealership. Back in Rogers, Arkansas, same thing. Indian dealership's just a mile or two down the road from Big Trail.
Well, Randall, I'd sound like if I was you, I'd find me a new dealer. $279 is what it costs for the bolt at the hardware store, and Harley wanted $50 and $12 to ship it. I have bought bolts like that for like a brake caliper or things like that from Doc, Harley Davidson, years ago, but they would, they'd be $3. They'd have them all lined up, extras behind the counter, miscellaneous, not everybody's like that for a bolt, but I'm not saying that some aren't. And I would, that's why I guess I'm lucky I have an MSRP dealer that's close, at least. They're not, maybe not giving me a great deal, but they're not screwing me. Here in Mountain Home, Lowe's and Home Depot are across the street. Yeah, Indian is needing help to get buyers in. Not a bad strategy. Yeah. Before we talk about the Daytona and the CVO video real quick, something, and you tell me what you think about this, but everybody talks about, Indians coming after Harley Davidson, blah, blah, blah. Indians aren't any cheaper. They're really not. You might argue that you're getting more for your money if you think it's a better bike, if you want a water-cooled Challenger, or because the Pursuit's got electronic controlled suspension. Those are really the only things that I see that they have to brag about. The electronic windshield does nothing for me personally. I rode all the bikes I can from Indian. I've rode the Pursuit, things like that. But I think Indian's got a problem, and it's who's going to be coming to knock them off the pedestal. The fact is, it's just like, boxing. When you look at championship boxing, there's guys that are ranked and they're trying to work their way up to number one. And you got a guy who's, hungry and starts out, and before you know it, he's fighting the number 2 contender so he can fight the number 1 contender. Who do you think Indians should be looking out for? Who do you think's going to be knocking on their door if they're not careful?
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that they're not concerned about foreign competition as much as they might be concerned about American, Harley Davidson. Have I heard you say that Buell's trying to make another comeback?
Well, Buell's trying to make a comeback, but that's not who I'm thinking of. I think BMW has a better chance of being number 2 than Indian does. And maybe not in, the Harley niche, but they've got the R18 Classic, the Bagger. They're trying to get there, but their K1600 is a great bike. I mean, specs wise, it smokes the Goldwing. It's like 150 or 160 horsepower and lighter. BMW, what you got to remember is they're not just a motorcycle company. There's a whole automotive industry behind them. It's kind of like, Indian has Polaris behind them for power sports. Polaris is bigger than Harley Davidson financially. Money-wise, they are bigger than Harley Davidson. So they have some maybe resources to back them up there. But BMW's got a whole automotive industry. And BMW, if you've been watching them, they, for the last 3 years, are setting a record year in sales every year. Their sales are going up. They're growing. They're the king in Europe. They're the big player. And they are trying to move into the U.S. market. They're looking to bring cruisers into the U.S. I rode the R18 at Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. I think for a lot of Harley guys, the forward controls is going to be a turnoff because there's no option there. But, I liked it better than the Indian Challenger, personally.
Well, now that you say that, a guy that I ride with, long-time Harley Davidson owner. He's getting up there in age. He's in his 70s. And, the weight of the bike. And he one day surprised us all. Showed up for our ride with a BMW. It's got the, reverse on it. Helps him get in and out of parking stalls and whatnot. And I gotta admit, it's a hell of a bike. I mean, so I could see where you would say BMW could be a concern for Indian, and it's got a little nostalgia to it, right? BMW is kind of a luxury item, so to speak. Certainly the vehicles have that persona.
Well, and they did. They discounted last year's models at the end of the season to get them off the floor. Things that we're not seeing other dealers doing. They're being competitive on pricing. From what I rode it seemed like a good bike. There was only 2 complaints. And the 2 complaints were that the one I rode didn't have the extended shift peg. So it was a little hard to do with my boot, but that's probably a $50 fix. And it was just the demo bike. The R18 bagger didn't have it on there, but all the rest of the bikes did. And that's a mistake on their part. The only other complaint I had from the demo ride is they had disabled the stereo, so you couldn't blast it. They said people try and blow the speakers. And kind of personally, I'm thinking if you got a factory stereo and I can blow the speakers, then we've got a tuning problem.
Yeah, problem.
You know, you've got more power than speaker, then you need either more speakers or less power. But you shouldn't disable the stereo when you're trying to sell bikes that has a premium Marshall sound system.
Yeah. What about the jugs? I mean, I just can't get over the look of that, the engine sticking out, you know, out the sides of the bike. It just doesn't appeal to me.
Right. And I think that's going to be like everything else, each to his own, you know, whether you like it or don't like it. I don't mind the look of it. I don't like that. I don't have forward foot positions. Yeah. I can't get my feet up as much as I can with the street glide and stuff. But, you know, it's hard to say. I would say BMW is probably as well off in the dealership aspect, at least here in the Midwest, from what I've seen, as Indian is. You know, we've got BMW of St. Louis, BMW of Kansas City. We've got BMW in Rogers. I think they used to have one in Springfield. I don't know if they still do, but the Indian dealer in Springfield area closed up. We've got Columbia for Indian, head Indian, and we've got the Indian dealer in Rogers. I assume you have an Indian dealer in Kansas City?
We do.
Yeah.
You touched on something, if I could, real quick. You talked about Indian and how they're bigger than Harley financially. And it made me think, you know, what's your take? Do you feel that maybe Indian is almost kind of a game to them, a toy that they can play with? Hey, if it takes off, great. If it doesn't, no big deal. We're still making tons of money. And could that be a part of their problem?
I think to some extent that maybe they don't. I mean, I think they want to be serious with it. I think they want to grow in there, but I also don't think they have to, because they don't have to make money with Indian to stay alive. The Harley Davidson has to make money because they got nothing else to lean on. You know, Polaris, Indian is a division. It's not its own, you know, company that's going to fold if it doesn't stand up. Polaris can prop it up as long as it doesn't get too far upside down. You know, BMW could be the same way. You know, the auto industry of it can support the motorcycle side, but BMW sells a shit ton of scooters also in other markets, in Southeast Asia, I guess, and Europe and whatever too. I don't know. I know one thing about the BMW financial stuff is it's hard to decipher. And so I've kind of stayed out of it because they include their scooter sales with their motorcycle sales. So it makes it impossible for me to do like an apples to apples, really. Someone else has a committee of squares up there.
Well, he changed it. If you look below.
So, question just got here. You guys addressing the Harley rebranding. Local hog chapter has been talking about dealerships being made to all look alike. I've heard that there was some talk about the dealerships rebranding and updating and stuff. And I think that's part of the maybe why some small dealerships are willing to sell out to big automotive groups, because they don't want to have the capital to put out for that. Now, I don't know. We'll see. I think Indians, you know, did you see the post that was going around this last week about them putting out a memo about getting rid of like clothing and products with the Indian headdress on it? Indians going broke.
No,
yeah,
I missed that.
So yeah, it's out on Facebook. So they put out this thing trying to get dealers to get rid of like clothing or whatever that has the Indian headdress on it, discount it, use this code for reimbursement, blah, blah, blah. Of course, they sent this memo out on letterhead that had the Indian headdress in the corner of the thing. So they're telling dealers, get rid of this. We're trying to be more cultural sensitive, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But they're doing it on a letter that still has that on there. Now, you notice they dropped that whole headdress warhead thing off the front fender a couple of years ago on some of the bikes.
That's what everybody loved. Everybody loved that the war chief on that front fender. That was one of the most iconic things they had. Yeah.
There's been a lot of stuff going on about them going woke. I don't know, what's going to happen there. I can see that happening, but I don't, like it particularly, but it is what it is. I can't tell them what to do with their company, and they would listen to me if I did. But
my hometown, from where I'm from, we're the Indians. That's our high school mascot. And not that I've done a ton of research on this, but I don't think Indians find that offensive.
Well,
so
there's a lot of stuff that's been done in the name of cultural sensitivity that people didn't like. I think the family that was behind the Aunt Jemima syrup lost a bunch of money when they took that away from them, and they weren't too happy about it. They weren't pushing to have it taken away, but then they lost the royalties for that use of that image or whatever.
Yeah.
In the name of cultural sensitivity, or whatever you want to call it, woke. It's just the color headdress, not the black and white. Well, it was the color headdress on the memo, so maybe they should have printed it in black and white. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the Indian there. Kansas Chiefs are not changing the champ's name. So, but Indians, the Buell thing, I think that's going to be, if the super chief comes out, we'll talk about it in a second, but I think there's a whole lot of things there that it looks cool on the outside, but you got to stop and think about it for a minute. So I just did the video and I talked about Buell that I released today. If anybody hasn't seen that, but talked about what might be coming at Daytona, because I've heard birds chirping in the wind will say that there's something coming. Obviously, they only released one CVO at the January launch, and they said more CVOs were coming. So I would expect to see a couple of CVOs, or at least one, if I would hope more than one, at Daytona, maybe reveal the rest of them, because there are people that are holding off on their purchases of a trike to see if there's a CVO trike or things like that. So I think it makes sense for them to launch a CVO, but I heard that to be looking for something with overhead cams. So the only motor I know they have right now in production with overhead cams is a Revolution Max engine. So are they going to put out a Revolution Max motorcycle? Because they said they might show a new bike or two in the launch. So, what would it be? What makes sense? I think Buell putting out that Super Cruiser, if Harley isn't ready, I'm sure they're already working on it. But I bet, when they put that Buell Super Cruiser out with the 2025 deadline, there was a meeting called. And if they didn't already have a 2025 deadline on that project, they do now. So they better have. They damn sure better have. Not that I think Buell's going to steal a lot of sales from them, but I think if they can put out a Pan America engine in a cruiser with 150 horse, with their reputation, their dealer network, and all the things that Buell lacks, they can put a nail in the coffin of Buell. That Super Cruiser will be a collector's item only.
Yeah, I think they hit a home run with this new motor. I think anyone I talk to seems to think it looks nice. So it seems to perform very well. And so I think that's the direction Harley's going. I think it would be cool to see one in a dresser. Especially I don't know about you, but I think there's a rise right now on the number of people wanting to take vacations on a bagger. Do you feel like that might be the case? I know my group, we keep going further and further. Like we were going to go to Sturgis, and then we decided to go to Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana.
Yeah, that's why I bought a bagger, was to go further, to get further from home comfortably. She's got her Sport Glide set up. I mean, she rode 550 miles in a day coming back from K River. She's going to do 700, a day on the Sport Glide going to Sturgis. And I know she's going to do 700 miles a day because she ain't got no choice. I'm riding mine and she's riding hers, so she's going to have to do it. That's just all there is to it. But I'm not worried about it. She did 550, no problem. So another 150 is not going to kill her. She wasn't crying or complaining at 550, so she'll make it. But, and she's kind of set that Softail up for touring. She's got, bags on it. She's got a little bit of a fairing on it. She got a better seat, so it's more comfortable. So, there are people that tour on Softails and stuff. But, if you really, I think, want to pound down the miles, you're going to get, the full touring line. And I think that's why Harley's focused on that line more so in their mix, is because that's where the sales are.
Can I ask April a question? When you got into when you finally started riding your own motorcycle, was it mainly just to kind of ride from, A and B, just locally, maybe go to a bar, a restaurant with your group that you ride with? Or did you?
My plan was to ride all the time. I just feel I didn't do that. And part of it is because I feel that my dyno wasn't fitted for me. It's a little more rough riding. I just wasn't as comfortable. And I didn't realize that. I chose to ride with Mike more and made excuses for this or that. But then when we go do the test rides, and after I rode the Sport Glide, I could tell a difference immediately. And then once I finally got one, now I'm doing what I wanted to do. So I wanted to originally, but I didn't because the dyno just wasn't the right fit for me. It wasn't really what I needed, but that purple got me. Purple gets me every time. So
let me ask you this. If you are now wanting to ride further, do you see yourself even wanting to ride further than you maybe even thought you would ever want to ride?
Oh, yeah.
Bigger trips. So that's me too.
And probably more of not like this last year, really. I mean, I rode 7,000 miles from when I bought it, which was 4,000 miles more than I'd ever put on the dyno the 3 years I had it. But I even pushed myself to where I didn't have to stop as much either. So I feel that, this year, the 700 mile in one day will be quite a bit for me, but I had no problem doing it when we did from Moyers, and I feel way more comfortable. So I think I will feel a lot better about riding a lot further. Yeah. So probably so.
I'm going to answer a question real quick. Mike Bodine asked this, and his comments kind of running off the page, but he asked if anybody was doing the Route 66 with the Badgers. I know I'm not. I didn't see any comments from anybody in the group, in the chat saying they are. Where are you? I assume you're probably not doing that, Steve. You said you guys were going to Wisconsin, because I think that deal is, middle of this summer. You didn't mention it.
I met both of them in Eureka Springs a year or two ago. Great, really nice couple, and they seem like good people. So I'm sure it's a great event. I'm not going to be able to make it.
So Jay says, if it's not a proper Road King at Daytona, I'm not interested. Pouty face. Jay rides a Road King, and he's, I think, hurt that they're not putting out a Road King. I think the Highway King is probably going to be like a 114 Road King with a different look, the different style seat, kind of like the Revival bike. So I suspect maybe we won't see a Road King this year, or we won't see a Road King till after it comes out, because they don't want everybody to know they're putting a 114 in it till they are ready to announce it, whenever that happens. Maybe it'll happen before the celebration, but I thought, the Highway King would be a cool icon bike to drop at the 120th anniversary party. On the Buell thing, Road Rush says they're great bikes, but they're in constant financial problem. I've done a little bit of research on the Buell thing, and they were bought out by a guy that buys out companies that are being liquidated. So the guy that owns them now's job was to buy what was left over and liquidate it. And in this case, he decided to keep it and try to make a motorcycle company out of it again. They're running off of the 1190 engine that Eric Buell designed when he owned the company or whatever, was still involved. And that's the only engine they got. They got one engine. It's 1190. That's now over 10 years old. And yes, it's, 175 horsepower. It's a great engine from what everything says, but they've got one engine. And how long can they milk that engine? Did you see the sport touring bike that they put out, here? If you didn't see it, you probably are lucky, because it made me want to throw up in a trash can. It was absolutely looked like somebody gave a crayon to a 12-year-old and said, draw me an ugly motorcycle. And that's what they did. The guy that designed it was like an industrial, artsy guy or whatever designer. And it was terrible. Yeah. Bringing Roland Sands in was, great. I'm glad they did it. The Super Cruiser looks good. But if you look at even the wording in the post, Roland Sands said something about, like, they used the word hope in the post. Hope to see everyone riding this bike, or hope to, because I think the fact is nobody has confidence that they can mass produce anything right now. I haven't seen a new Buell on the road, period, anywhere.
No.
They sell this 1190 Hammerhead, and they've got a stripped down naked bike. And then last year they came out with the Sport Tour, and now it's going to be the Super Cruiser in 2025. But, does it really count if they only sell 50 of them or 100 of them?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
It's all going to come down to money. Do they have enough money? And if I'm Harley Davidson, I squish them like a grape. I just get with my team and build a bike that's comparable. And
right, I get why Harley Davidson hasn't come after them in the sport bike industry, where that's where they've been playing at. But when they step into the cruiser industry, I can see Harley Davidson. Like I said, they should have been a meeting this week. Said, hey, what's the deadline on the Revolution Max Cruiser? Soft tail version. What's the deadline where we add on it, and what's it going to take to make sure it's out, before 2025?
Yeah, I think Harley's been making some good moves the last couple of years. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep that momentum going.
Yeah, like I said, Buell, from what I understand, has no dealer network still. They can't get dealers, or there's only, I think last time I looked at the website, there was like 6 places in the country, you could order a Buell from. That's no dealer network. We'll see how it turns out. I don't hate on Buell. Don't take me wrong. I want them to succeed because competition's good. The reality is I don't see it happening. I have no confidence that I'll ever see a Super Cruiser in the wild. And their website, I looked through this whole pre-order system. It's a non-refundable $50 deposit to pre-order it, but it's not a guarantee of delivery. And then it says it's refundable through, one paragraph down. And then the next 5 paragraphs all say non-refundable deposit. So, it doesn't even read right. But, from what I understand, if you order it and then you find, like, you don't even know the price when you order it. You put down a $50 pre-order deposit. They don't know what the price is going to be yet. When they tell you the price, if you don't want it, you can say no, but they're keeping your $50. All
right, let me throw a what if at you if I can. Let's say Buell gets going a little bit and they start getting a little traction. They just don't have the money. And then Harley can come in and buy them out, and they can make a fair amount of profit by doing that. Is that a win-win for both?
Harley, I don't see Harley buying them out, because Harley's the one that sold them to this guy. They closed the company down. Right. He bought the assets from Harley Davidson. I don't, maybe if it makes enough business sense, they would do it. But if it was me, if I sold the assets off to this guy and then he turned around and tried to make competition for me, I wouldn't buy him out. I would step on him. I'd squish him. Like you said, I would be that was the deal. Was you were supposed to liquidate the company, and then you decided after you bought it that you were going to make motorcycles. And personally, maybe I'm vindictive. I don't know, but that'd be my take on that deal.
Yeah. That'd be interesting to see.
A lot of people, would like to see the Bronx come out. I don't know if it will or won't. It's the one I think gets the most comments out of all the bikes that they talked about making but didn't. But, we'll have to see. Hey, Ray, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Ray.
Ray was hanging out with us at Cycle Showcase.
Great guy.
Yes, sir. Well, Dallas and Ray and Pro Monkey and Lucky, what was Monkey's chauffeur's name? Can't think of it now.
Oh,
his buddy from high school. I was around all weekend.
I asked him to take my picture on my phone at the pre-party, and when I got my phone back, he'd taken a bunch of pictures of himself. It's not. It's oh god, Butch or Bull.
Yeah, they were great bunch of people hanging out with everybody at Cycle Showcase. We had a good time.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Curled up and
the chat is going crazy. We got 45 people in here now.
All right.
Because they want to see me, not you.
Yes.
Well,
Firecracker, I'm a lady, 62 years old, and ride a street glide for our cross-country trips. I got an 87 Softail, 87 Ricer, running that Evo engine. 87 Ricer is another Missouri boy. He's up in the Herman area when he's home. Bagger Bader. So, I guess and I saw a comment about this. Have you looked into anything with the new Super Chief that Indian announced in the last week?
Have I no?
Okay. I haven't either. I've got to do a video on it. It's getting a lot of press, but I got to sit down and do my homework. I don't just jump in and say, oh, I think it's this or think it's that. I want to know what it is. And I have not had time to look at any of the videos on it or go through any of the specs or anything else yet. I had these, we had Cycle Showcase and I was sick and then we moved and I didn't do any videos for like 3 weeks till last weekend. And I had, to get stuff out.
I'm like you though.
We're going to miss King River.
I mean, I'm like you. I want Indian to succeed. I really do, because I think it helps the community at large. I think we all win if both American companies can do well.
Well, I'm not sure which one's typing for which Craft Cycle Works, but if it's Ray, I understand she can't get the time off. If it's Bill, I'd say his boss is a dick and he should just take off anyway, although he is self-employed.
I was going to.
So
I can relate. My boss is a dick as well.
You still got to have the money to pay your bills while you're off work. We all got jobs we got to do. We can't just take off for weeks at a time. And we can't be $1 million bogan and spend $80,000 on a trip from LA down to South America. Well, and like my job, I don't know that they would want to let me off for that many weeks in a row. There's other people that want vacation and,
Harley needs to come out with the Grom type bike. I think it's called the X350RA. It's only going to be available in the Riding Academy, but they're going to come out with a little Chinese bike. That's a whole nother topic. They might come out with a 500 that might actually not be Riding Academy, but I don't know if that'll happen or not, if it'll be in the U.S. market. I see them releasing it in other markets first before they try it here. Jay said with the success of the Pan American, maybe they'll realize they can build anything they want. It sounds like he's been watching Sprite's video. And I don't know that that's not true. Middle Tennessee Concrete said Bull was right on the name. So I'm way behind on comments. They've been killing us in here, man. I can't keep up.
Let me answer Mike Bodine. We are missing K River this year.
Yeah, as it stands, we're probably missing K River. We're doing Sturgis, and that's going to take up 5 days of vacation. So,
And with me starting a new job, my vacation went back down to less than I was at. So,
well, Harley wants to go electric. What he said was he sees eventually Harley will be all electric. They're trying to pioneer electric, but he didn't put a date on it. Honda said the same thing. If you all don't know, Honda's put a date on it, like by 2040, all their cars and motorcycles are going to be electric. All these manufacturers are talking this. They're just not all saying it in a press article. And because Honda says it, nobody in the U.S. cares. Harley says it, everybody in the U.S. makes a big deal out of it. They're all saying it, but don't mean they're going to do it. And I know there are some states and some lawmakers that are going to say, oh, you can't sell, so many motors have to be electronic by this date, and they're going to ban the internal combustion engine by this date and everything else. That's, saying it and doing it's two different things. And the fact is that most of this legislation about the number of vehicles that have to be electronic and stuff exclude motorcycles because they're not primary transportation. What they're trying to do is, get more cars and trucks and stuff like that to be electrified for pollution than motorcycles, to be honest. We'll see what happens. I don't see too many charging stations out here in central Missouri. So I don't see the, infrastructure for it to be anytime soon. And I've said that multiple times. And I think battery technology that is out there currently isn't good enough, but I hear there's technology around the corner they're working on that's better. And, but I think until that stuff is actually tried and tested, putting a date on when we're going to be electric's a far cry of putting the cart in front of the horse. When you buying your live wire?
Someday there could be an electric bike in my garage. It's not going to be anytime soon.
Is it going to be the only bike in your garage?
Not if I have anything to say about it.
Yeah, everybody that rides one says they're awesome to ride. The problem is for me, like if I wanted to ride to St. Louis, I don't know that I could get there without it dying before I got there. And then if I got there, I'd have to go straight to the Harley dealer and put it on a fast charge, ride around for the day, and then go back to the Harley dealer and put it on the fast charge again to get home. So that's my problem. And that's why I don't see them, the infrastructure being a problem here. I will be doing a ride, the Ozarks video series, once it warms up a bit more. Right on. Where are they getting the cobalt for all these batteries? Who knows? Strip mining. We're strip mining the world.
There's a great video out there right now on the internet about that. It's probably what he's referring to.
Yeah. Yeah, the Honda just came out with the CB125. They are, they announced the DAX, which is like the Trail 90 style bike in Europe last year, and wait to see if that's going to make it to the U.S. I haven't checked up, see where it's at on that yet, but let's fill it up with 93 and ride. Absolutely. It's the live wire kickstart. Yeah, Bill, you just keep kicking on until it starts, buddy. When you hear the motor rev, you're ready to go. I'm enjoying the live stream. Hope you all make this regularly. We are going to try and do it at least once a month, maybe twice a month. Now that Firecrackers agreed to live under the same roof as me, it'll make it a little easier for us to do stuff like this together. So Tuesday nights seem to work good for us. Wednesday nights are date nights. Weekends we travel. We got events. We got things like that. So Tuesday nights seem to work pretty well for us. So if we do them, they're probably going to be Tuesday night streams. We are doing. Oh, that was you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Bodine was asking if we were going to Switchback.
I know. I can't keep up.
I know you can't.
We're up to
You
47.
talk too much.
I think we can break 50 in the chat.
I think we can. Let's do it.
Tell all your friends to jump in just so we can hit. We just hit 50. We just did it right there. So make a hybrid bike with an internal charging system, yet it has to be affordable. Yeah, that's the thing. Affordable. That's a big part of the whole electric sham.
Yeah.
Ortho's going to try and make the K River.
Yeah, we're not doing that one.
I don't have any camping gear. Don't worry. If you come to the Freedom Rally, you don't need camping gear. Just
They're talking about
K River.
K River.
I know, but if you come to Freedom Rally, you don't even need clothes, much less camping gear. You can leave them at the gate when you get there. Pick them up on your way out. Rock Island Bar and Grill opens officially April 14th. All bikers welcome. Is this Rock Island at the Strip at the lake, Terry? And because there's a Rock Island Tavern or bar there at the Strip. Just you know where Snafu is, right in front of Ice Hole and stuff. Have you know what I'm talking about? Right next to that, there's a Rock Island. So I'm wondering if that's the bar he's referring to.
Could be.
There could be more than one, though. This is the internet. Hit the thumbs up. Thank you, Mike. So the one on Indian Point.
That's the one we were talking to the other night.
Oh, yeah.
And the live stream.
And yeah, that's the one in Branson. He was on the live stream and stuff that we did last one.
On our way, it would be on our way to BBB.
Yeah, we could
Springfield.
hit that. He's out by Silver Dollar City, kind of. Yeah, past Silver Dollar City. So the Super Chief, I need to look at the specs on, but what that is, and from what I can tell, from what little bit I've seen about it, it's a Chief with better suspension, and I think maybe better bars, but it's the same engine. The only performance thing they did was put better suspension on it. And it's supposed to be coming after the Lowrider S. That's what it's targeted at. Is a Sport Chief is a more sporty version of the Chief. So it doesn't have, the windshield and all that. I think they put, kind of risers and, different bars on it to make it more like the Lowrider S. And they put Fox piggyback suspension on it and KYB front forks on it. So basically it's a Chief with a suspension upgrade is what it is. And new bars from what I've seen. I haven't dug into it. I could be wrong. There could be a lot more to it, but I glanced through the press announcement, and that's the only thing that really stood out to me was, ergonomics by doing different bars. And the big thing was the suspension, which, great, but that's not anything that you can't do yourself if you really wanted to. Yeah.
Scroll that page down.
Which page?
That, so I want to take a picture of our events that you got on there.
Well, they're on the website.
Well, I know, but I'm just I want to do this. Just ignore me.
Yeah, just stand in front of the camera, Firecracker.
Yep, I will.
And I'll like it too.
I will. Dang it, stop.
What'd I do? You don't even know. Don't tell. Don't you guys tell.
Are you being naughty?
I'm never naughty.
Get it.
Can I just send it to you?
Nope, I'm going to do this, and then I'll chop it the way I need it.
So
Jim, chop it, Mike. Run.
Super Chief I saw had Dynasty. Oh yeah, it has different bars, but it has this quarter fairing that I would replace with the Memphis Shades immediately because I don't like it. I don't like the quarter fairing. It's got little grooves on the side for airflow or something, but I didn't dig the quarter fairing at all. I thought the Memphis Shades Road Warrior would be an upgrade personally, but yeah, they put that whole club style look on the bike, better suspension, those kind of bars, a quarter fairing on the front, and that makes it a new model. And that's what we do. That's what we do in the motorcycle industry. I mean, the soft tails and all that's, there's a lot of debate about it, but the Lowrider S, Lowrider ST, what's the difference? Suspension and a fairing, with stereo in it. The Sport Glide, some people take that fairing and put it on the Lowrider, to clamp on. They both have inverted front forks. The difference was forward controls, the fairing, and the motor, because the Sport Glide stayed at a 107. So, I get why Harley cuts some models and they add some others. So, I think the Breakout, from what I hear, the Breakout's been doing well since it came back for sales. The salesman I talked to said, I wish Harley would, keep it for 2 years and then cut it for 2 years and then keep it for 2 years, because it sells a lot better in that 2-year period. So we sell a lot more of them now than we did before they cut it.
I was really surprised when they got rid of that, and I wondered if it would be back someday.
Well, they didn't get rid of it overseas. Europe still had it. They had the 3.5 gallon tank and 114 or whatever, or 107, whatever was in it. I don't remember now, but it got to 117 and it got a 5 gallon tanks, basically what the Breakout got. And I think 3/4 inch taller risers, but it's a long chopper look bike and stuff. And I like the Breakout. I'd like to ride it. And that's another thing. Ozark Rides Rally, they're going to have demo rides there, Steve. You could come down there and ride all the new bikes that day.
I would love to ride a Breakout.
Too many models anymore. So I don't know. Anything else you want to talk about, Steve, man? You got anything that's you're itching to discuss? I know I probably talked way too much.
Yeah, I've always had a problem with being quiet and shy.
No, I just run at the mouth a lot.
This is the end of episode 2. If you like this format, please leave me a comment down below.